The sky over Hive Turt fractured, not in metaphor but in terrible truth. Reality itself peeled back like scorched skin, revealing a wound in the cosmos that bled crimson light across the polluted skies of Moa Secundus. Within the boiling tear, something fell. A single figure wreathed in emerald fire and trailing ribbons of unnatural light. Arbitrator Dolan Vex watched through magnoculars as the object struck the outer hab zones with meteoric force. The impact shook the foundations of the hive spire, causing lumens to flicker and servitors to falter in their endless labours. Warning klaxons wailed throughout the sector. A new threat had come to Moa Secundus, a world already teetering on the brink of damnation. "Throne preserve us," whispered Vex, lowering his magnulars. "Another incursion so soon." Moira Secundus had suffered greatly in recent months. Strange cult activity had blossomed in the underhives, spreading like a cancer through the labyrinthine depths. Citizens reported disturbing dreams of blood and brass. Manufacture and production faltered as workers disappeared or went mad at their stations. The Ecclesi preached of divine punishment, while the Adeptus Arbeit struggled to maintain order. And now this Vex activated his Vox control. "This is Arbitrator Vex. I have visual confirmation of an impact in Hab Block 17. Request immediate reinforcement and Mechanicus hazard assessment." The reply was thick with static. "Negative. Arbitrator. All units are deployed to the southern districts. The cultists have launched a full-scale uprising. The governor has declared martial law and requested Astartes intervention." Vex cursed under his breath. Of course the heretics would choose this moment to reveal themselves. Perhaps they had summoned whatever fell from the sky. He checked his bolt pistol and shock maul, steeling himself for what lay ahead. "Control. I am proceeding to investigate the impact site. Negative. Arbitrator. Return to precinct headquarters immediately." Vex ignored the command, holstering his magnulars and mounting his Arbit's pattern motorcycle. The machine roared to life, belching black promethium smoke as he gunned the engine and raced toward the impact zone. The Emperor demanded courage in the face of the unknown. Vex would not be found wanting. The streets grew more chaotic as he approached Hablock 17. Civilians fled in terror, their faces masks of panic and confusion. Fire suppression systems sprayed ineffectually at burning structures. Through the smoke and fleeing crowds, Vex caught glimpses of figures moving with deliberate purpose toward the impact site. They wore the tattered rags of hivers, but moved with an unnatural synchronicity. Cultists. Vex skidded his motorcycle to a halt behind an overturned cargo hauler, drawing his bolt pistol. Whatever had fallen from the sky, the cultists sought it. That alone was reason enough to stop them. The arbitrator crept forward, keeping to cover. The impact had carved a smoking crater into the centre of a hab plaza. Rockcrete and Prometheum lines had ruptured, filling the air with dust and flames. At the centre of the destruction stood a lone figure. Vex raised his magnulars again, adjusting the focus. The figure wore armour unlike any Imperial design he had ever seen. Olive-green plates covered a humanoid form of impossible proportions, too broad and powerful to be an unaugmented human, yet lacking the bulk of an artis. A helmet with a transparent visor concealed the being's face, revealing only cold eyes that surveyed the destruction with clinical detachment. But most disturbing were the weapons. The armoured figure carried an arsenal that defied categorization. No lasgun or bolter, but brutal primitive-looking devices of obvious lethal purpose. As Vex watched, the figure checked each weapon with practiced efficiency. Like a veteran preparing for war, the cultists emerged from the shadows, dozens of them encircling the crater. They carried makeshift weapons, industrial tools repurposed for violence. Some bore crude symbols carved into their flesh, the mark of Khorne evident even from Vex's position. They approached cautiously, as if drawn to the armoured figure, yet wary of its purpose. "Blood for the blood god," they chanted, the words carrying across the plaza. "Skulls for the skull throne." The armoured figure turned slowly, regarding the cultists with eerie stillness. For a moment silence reigned over the plaza. Then the slaughter began. The green-armoured warrior moved with impossible speed, raising a weapon that roared with mechanical fury. The closest cultists simply disintegrated, their bodies torn apart by a hail of metal projectiles. Not lasfire or bolt shells, but something more primitive and no less deadly. The cultists charged, howling with bloodlust, but their fervour quickly turned to terror. The warrior tore through their ranks without hesitation or mercy. When one weapon ran dry, another appeared in his hands as if by sorcery. A blue-white energy beam cut through 3 cultists at once, reducing them to smouldering halves. A thunderous explosion turned another group into red mist and scattered limbs. Vex watched in horror and awe as a single warrior massacred over 30 cultists in less than a minute. No wasted movement, no hesitation, no mercy, just methodical, practiced violence, executed with terrifying precision. When the last cultist fell, the plaza fell silent once more. The warrior stood among the carnage, seemingly unmoved by the destruction he had wrought. He knelt beside one of the cultists, examining the heretical markings carved into dead flesh. Something changed in his posture then, a subtle shift that Vex recognized from years of enforcing imperial law. Recognition, purpose, rage. The warrior stood and turned his gaze to the hive spire that dominated the skyline. Without a backward glance at the devastation, he began walking with singular purpose toward the heart of the hive city. Vex activated his vox again, hands trembling slightly. Control. This is Arbitrator Vex. The object from the tear in the sky was a warrior, a human or transhuman in unknown pattern armor. He just slaughtered 30 cultists without taking a single wound. He appears to be heading toward the central spire. The vox crackled. Arbitrator, return to headquarters immediately. The Inquisition has taken command of all Arbert's forces. Vex felt his blood run cold. The Inquisition had arrived on Mor Secundus. The situation was worse than he had imagined. Repeat your last control. Inquisitor Malrek of the Ordo Malus has declared Exterminatus Extremis Contingency Planning. All Imperial forces are to assist in containment protocols. Exterminatus, the ultimate sanction. Vex looked again at the armoured figure, now distant but still visible, moving with implacable purpose toward the spire. Control the warrior who emerged from the tear. He fought against the cultists. He killed them all. That changes nothing, Arbitrator. The Inquisitor has declared all non-imperial entities hostile. Return to headquarters immediately. Vex hesitated, torn between duty and what he had witnessed. Finally, he remounted his motorcycle, acknowledged control, returning to base. As he rode through the burning streets, Vex could not shake the image of those cold eyes behind the visor, the mechanical precision of the warrior's movements. Emperor, protect us, he thought. Emperor, protect us all. Inquisitor. Ezekiel Malrek stood before the halithic display in the governor's strategium, his aged face illuminated by the glow of tactical projections. His black power armor adorned with silver inquisitorial iconography creaked softly as he leaned forward to study the spreading chaos consuming Mor Secundus. The incursion points are expanding, he said, his voice a dry rasp. After decades of breathing the smoke of burning heretics, the cult uprising was mere beginning. They seek to open a full warp rift in the heart of the hive. Governor Albinus Fresh wrung his hands nervously, but your acolytes reported the ritual was disrupted. Inquisitor, the sacrificial chambers were found empty. Malrek fixed the governor with a withering stare. Because something else has arrived first, something that has upset the delicate balance of this incursion. He gestured to a blinking rune on the display, tracking the path of destruction, cutting through the underhive. Reports flooded in from terrified citizens and dying arbitrals. A lone warrior in green armor wielding weapons of terrible destructive power, leaving nothing but corpses in his wake. This entity emerged from a localized warp tier, continued Malrek. Initial reports suggested a teleport signature, but the energy patterns are inconsistent with any known Imperial or Xenos technology. It moves with purpose, hunting cultists and destroying their ritual sites. Magos Explorer Reichen, the senior tech priest assigned to Malrek's retinue, stepped forward. His mechanical limbs clicked and whirred as he interfaced directly with the holithic projector. Most curious Inquisitor buzzed the magos, his vox synthesizer fluctuating with machine excitement. The entity's armor readings show no warp signature, yet its weapons discharge energy patterns inconsistent with known laws of physics. Some appear to be primitive solid projectile devices, while others harness energies our Auspex arrays cannot categorize. Could it be a lost Astartes? Asked the governor hopefully. Perhaps a space marine has come to our aid. No, replied Malrek firmly. I have consulted with the Deathwatch kill team in orbit. Brother Captain Thu confirms no Arties operations are underway on Moira Secundus. Furthermore, the entity's proportions and combat doctrine match no known chapter. The Inquisitor manipulated the display, zooming in on grainy-picked captures of the green-armoured figure. This is something else. Perhaps a warp entity in material form or some new weapon of the arch-enemy. But it fights against the cultists, protested the governor. Malrekka's expression hardened. The great enemy often turns upon itself, Governor. Chaos is nothing if not capricious. Perhaps this entity serves a rival power. Perhaps it seeks the same prize as the cult, but for different masters. Regardless, it represents an unknown variable in an already volatile equation. He turned to the Magos. Continue tracking the entity. I want all data transmitted to the Deathwatch vessel in orbit. As you command, Inquisitor, clicked the tech priest. Malrek faced the governor once more. I am authorizing the deployment of the Deathwatch kill team to intercept and neutralize this entity. If it cannot be contained, we must be prepared for more drastic measures. The governor blanched. Surely Exterminatus is not necessary, Inquisitor. More Secundus is vital to the subsector's production quotas. The loss of one world is preferable to the damnation of an entire system, said Malrek coldly. Pray that the Deathwatch succeeds in their mission. Governor, for all our sakes. As if summoned by his words, a towering figure in midnight black power armour entered the strategium. Brother Captain Thu of the Deathwatch stood 2 1/2 m tall, his artist's physiology enhanced further by his tactical dreadnought armour. The distinctive silver pauldron of the Deathwatch gleamed in stark contrast to the matte black ceramite covering the rest of his massive form. Inquisitor, rumbled Thu, his voice deep and resonant. My kill team stands ready. We have studied the entity's combat patterns and prepared appropriate countermeasures. Malrek nodded. Excellent, Brother Captain. This entity has demonstrated exceptional combat prowess. It has slain over 100 cultists and destroyed 3 ritual sites in the span of a few hours. Approach with caution. The Emperor's finest do not. No fear, Inquisitor, replied Thu. We shall capture this entity for your interrogation or destroy it trying. The Emperor protects, inoned Malrek. The Emperor protects, echoed the Deathwatch captain before turning to depart, his heavy footfalls echoing through the strategium. When the Space Marine had gone, Malrek returned his attention to the tactical display. The green rune representing the entity continued its inexorable progress through the hive, leaving destruction in its wake. You still have not explained why you believe this entity to be hostile, said the governor, summoning a measure of courage. By all accounts, it fights against the enemies of the Imperium. Malrek's thin lips curved into a cold smile. Because, Governor, my acolytes recovered this. He produced a data slate and activated it, revealing a picked capture taken from a security coitator in the lower hive. The image showed the green-armoured figure standing over the broken bodies of cultists. But it was not the carnage that drew the eye. It was the symbol emblazoned on the warrior's armour, partially visible on his shoulder, a stylized icon that to the untrained eye might seem innocuous. But to an Inquisitor of the Order Malus, its significance was unmistakable. This symbol resembles iconography associated with certain chaos entities, explained Malrek, specifically those aligned with the blood god. The governor stared at the image, his face draining of colour. But that makes no sense. Why would a servant of Khorne slaughter the very cultists who worship his master? Malrek's eyes gleamed with zealous certainty. Perhaps it seeks to claim their skulls for itself. Perhaps it serves a rival aspect of the blood god. The ways of chaos are beyond mortal comprehension. Governor, that is why the Inquisition exists, to face the incomprehensible and excise it from the Emperor's realm. He shut off the data slate, plunging the symbol back into darkness. Whatever this entity is, wherever it came from, it does not belong in the Emperor's Imperium, and I shall see it destroyed. The Doomslayer moved through the Underhive with singular purpose. This place was not hell, but it carried the same stench of corruption, the same taint of demonic presence, different symbols, different chants, but the essence remained the same. Humanity corrupted, reality warped, the weak preyed upon by the strong. He had killed dozens since his arrival, cultists mostly, their bodies marked with crude symbols of devotion to entities that wrire of familiar evil. They died easily, their mortal frames no match for his weapons or his fury. Their blood-crazed attacks reminded him of the possessed he had slaughtered across countless dimensions. Different vessels, same essence. The Slayer paused at an intersection of rusted corridors, the air thick with chemical runoff and human misery. His helmet systems analysed the environment, highlighting traces of unusual energy signatures similar to Argent energy, but different, corrupted, unstable. He followed the strongest reading, moving deeper into the labyrinth of abandoned habitation blocks. A wall of corroded metal blocked his path. Without hesitation, he raised his super shotgun and fired both barrels. The wall disintegrated, revealing a chamber beyond. The Slayer stepped through the breach. The room had been transformed into a shrine to violence. Human remains hung from rusted hooks, their blood collected in crude vessels below. Symbols covered the walls, painted in bodily fluids. At the center stood an altar, and upon it a pulsing orb of malevolent crimson energy. The Slayer recognized its purpose immediately, a portal, a gateway for demonic invasion, different in form from those he had seen before, but identical in function. He stepped forward, intent on destroying it. A chittering sound from above was his only warning. The Slayer rolled sideways as a creature dropped from the ceiling, humanoid but twisted, its flesh rippling with unnatural musculature. Bony protrusions erupted from its skin in grotesque patterns. Its face was a nightmare of too many eyes and too many teeth. It howled, a sound that carried the madness of dimensions beyond mortal comprehension. Not a demon from his hell, but something equally corrupt. The Slayer did not hesitate. He switched to his heavy cannon and opened fire. The creature moved with unnatural speed, leaping and bounding across the walls and ceiling. The Slayer tracked its movements, his aim unerring. Explosive rounds tore chunks from the creature's flesh, but it continued its frenzied attack, regenerating even as it suffered grievous wounds. The Slayer switched tactics. As the creature lunged, he sidestepped and drew his chainsaw in one fluid motion. The tooth-fed blade roared to life, biting deep into corrupted flesh. The creature shrieked as the chainsaw tore through its torso, spewing ichor and viscera across the chamber floor. Even bisected, the creature continued to thrash and claw at the Slayer. He finished it with his super shotgun, the point-blank blast obliterating what remained of its head and upper body. Silence returned to the chamber. The Slayer turned his attention back to the pulsing orb. He approached cautiously, recognizing the danger it represented. His armor's systems registered increasing energy fluctuations as he neared the altar. The orb seemed to respond to his presence, its crimson glow intensifying. The Slayer reached for it, intending to crush it or contain it. Before he could touch it, the orb pulsed violently. A shockwave of corrupted energy filled the chamber, washing over the Slayer's armor. Warning indicators flashed across his visor. His armor's systems struggled to repel the invasive energy. For a moment, his vision filled with crimson light. Then came the whispers. Voices speaking in languages he did not know, yet somehow understood. Blood, skulls, throne, glory, strength, war. The Slayer had heard such whispers before in the depths of hell and beyond. The voices of entities that fed on violence and suffering that sought to corrupt and control. His response was the same as it had always been. Rage, pure, focused, and absolute. The Slayer roared, a sound inaudible outside his helmet but deafening within. His fury burned away the whispers, scorched the corruption, attempting to seep into his mind. His armor's runes flared with protective energy, systems recalibrating to resist this new form of attack. The orb pulsed again, more frantically now. The Slayer grabbed it, feeling the corrupted energy trying to burn through his gauntlets. He squeezed, channeling his rage into physical force. The orb shattered with a sound like a dying scream. A final pulse of energy erupted outward, then dissipated. Where the orb had been, only crystalline fragments remained, already turning to ash. The Slayer examined the fragments, confirming the portal's destruction. Another demonic incursion halted, but this was just one shrine, one potential gateway. His helmet systems continued to detect similar energy signatures throughout the massive hive structure. More shrines, more portals, more demons to kill. He reloaded his weapons methodically, preparing for the battles ahead. Whatever this place was, whatever dimension or reality he had been cast into, his purpose remained unchanged. He would find the source of the corruption and destroy it. He would hunt every demon, break every altar, close every portal. The Slayer moved on, leaving the desecrated shrine behind. As he stepped into the corridor, his helmet sensors detected movement ahead. Multiple targets approaching with disciplined precision. Not the frenzied advance of cultists or demons, but the measured approach of trained warriors. The Slayer readied his heavy cannon. Whatever came, he would face it as he had faced every other threat across countless dimensions with unrelenting fury. Brother Captain Thu led his kill team through the Underhive, their estate senses alert for any sign of their quarry. 5 of the Emperor's finest warriors, drawn from different chapters, but united in purpose under the aegis of the Death Watch. Each was a veteran of countless campaigns, selected for their expertise in combating Xenos and warp entities. Energy signatures consistent with the target detected ahead, reported Brother Sebastian, the kill team's Techarine. His armor's sensors, enhanced by Mechanicus implants and blessings, probed the darkness beyond their position. Multiple deceased humanoids present, signs of extreme trauma consistent with previous encounter sites. Tools signaled for the kill team to advance with caution. They moved through the ruined corridor in perfect formation, bolters ready. The stench of death grew stronger as they approached the site of the latest slaughter. "Throne, preserve us," muttered Brother Castiel, the Blood Angel's assault marine. As they entered a chamber of carnage, cultists lay strewn across the floor, their bodies torn apart by weapons of terrible power. Blood and viscera painted the walls in grotesque patterns. "Control your emotions, brother," warned Thu. "Remember your training." Castiel nodded. The red thirst that plagued his chapter momentarily stirred by the sight and smell of so much blood. He mastered it quickly, centering himself through practiced mental discipline. "Inquisitor Malrek was correct," said Brother Varen, the ultramarine tactical specialist. "The entity hunts cultists with extreme prejudice." "And with extreme prejudice shall we hunt it," replied Toole grimly. "Brother Sebastian, can you determine its direction?" The Tech Marine consulted his Auspex array once more. "The trail leads deeper into the Underhive, Brother Captain, toward an area of unusual energy fluctuations. The primary cult ritual site said, Brother Craven, the Raven Guard recon specialist." His voice was a whisper barely audible even to Art's hearing. Malrek's acolytes reported significant warp activity in that sector. Toole considered this information. The entity may be attempting to disrupt the cult's activities, but that does not make it an ally. Inquisitor Malrek has declared it Xenos or warp-tainted. Our orders are clear. Capture if possible, destroy if necessary, recited Brother Varen. "We must assume the entity is as dangerous as reports suggest," continued Thu. "It has slain hundreds of cultists and at least one lesser daemon without apparent injury. Standard engagement protocols will be followed. Brother Gorgon, you will lead with suppressive fire. Brothers Castile and Craven will flank while Brothers Sebastian and Varen support my frontal assault." Brother Gorgon, the Iron Hand's heavy weapons specialist, checked his heavy bolter with reverent precision. "The weakness of the flesh is death, but the strength of the machine is eternal," he intoned, reciting his chapter's mantra as his augmentic fingers caressed the weapons. "Activation rites." "The Emperor protects," said Thu, completing the ritual words before battle. "The Emperor protects," echoed his battle brothers. The kill team advanced through the Underhive, following the trail of destruction left by their quarry. The path led them through abandoned Factorum blocks, past the ruins of worker habitats, and into areas so degraded that even the hardy Underhive gangs avoided them. "Energy spike ahead," reported Sebastian suddenly, consistent with weapons discharge. Before Thu could respond, the wall beside them exploded outward in a shower of rocket and metal. Through the dust and debris emerged a twisted figure, its form reminiscent of a human, but corrupted beyond recognition. A demon, or a human, so warped by chaos as to be indistinguishable from one. It screeched as it caught sight of the kill team, revealing rows of needle-like teeth. But the sound cut short as a green-armoured figure burst through the opening behind it. The entity, their quarry, grabbed the daemon by its elongated neck and slammed it into the ground with bone-crushing force. For a brief moment, the Death Watch and the Slayer regarded each other across the broken body of the daemon. 5 towering transhuman warriors in midnight black power armor faced a single figure in olive-green plate. The moment stretched, pregnant with possibility. Then Brother Gorgon opened fire. The heavy bolter roared, filling the corridor with mass reactive shells. The Slayer moved with incredible speed, rolling aside as the deadly projectiles tore through the space he had occupied a split second before. He came up firing his own weapon, spitting a stream of high-velocity rounds that sparked off the Astartes' power armor. "Spread out," ordered Thu over the kill. "Teams Vox, contain and suppress." The Space Marines moved with practiced efficiency, creating a firing perimeter around the Slayer. Bolt rounds filled the air, but their quarry proved unnaturally agile, weaving between the streams of fire with inhuman precision. The Slayer switched weapons, raising a device that momentarily confused the Deathwatch's targeting systems. A green burst of energy erupted from the barrel, striking Brother Veyron square in the chest. The Ultramarine staggered backward, his power armor systems flickering as the strange energy played across its surface. "Unknown energy weapon," reported Sebastian. "Disrupting power armor machine spirits. Recommend caution." Thu drew his power sword, its blade crackling with disruptive energy. "Brother Castiel, with me. Close combat engagement." The Blood Angel's assault marine ignited his jump pack, launching himself toward the Slayer with twin lightning claws extended. Tool charged forward, power sword raised. The rest of the kill team adjusted their fire to avoid their brothers, maintaining suppressive volleys to limit the Slayer's mobility. The Slayer met the assault head-on. As Castiel descended, the Slayer side stepped with pattern-natural speed and grabbed the Astartes jump pack. Using the Blood Angel's own momentum, he slammed the Space Marine into the ground with shocking force, Kamit cracking against Rocket. Thule reached the Slayer a moment later, his power sword arcing down in a killing blow. The Slayer raised his arm, blocking the strike with a forearm guard that somehow resisted the disruptive field of the power weapon. With his free hand, the Slayer delivered a punch to Thule's chest that sent the Terminator-armoured captain sliding backwards several meters. "Thrown!" gasped Varron, his systems recovering from the energy weapon's effects. "Its strength rivals our own." Castiel rose from the ground, his armor dented but functional. He engaged the Slayer in close combat, lightning claws slashing with transhuman speed. The Slayer matched him blow for blow, dodging what he could not block and countering with devastating strikes of his own. Gorgon and Sebastian continued firing, seeking openings that would not endanger their battle brother. Craven had disappeared into the shadows, moving to find an advantageous position for a precision strike. The Slayer broke free from Castiel, leaping backward to create distance. He raised his arm and a blade of crackling energy extended from his gauntlet. With a single fluid motion, he slashed through a support column beside him. The ceiling above groaned ominously. "Fall back," shouted Thu, recognizing the danger. "Structural collapse imminent." The kill team retreated as the ceiling came down, massive chunks of rocket and metal separating them from their quarry. Through the dust and debris, they caught a final glimpse of the green-armoured figure turning away, continuing its hunt deeper into the underhive. "Brother Sebastian, status report," demanded Thule as the dust settled. The Tech Marine consulted his Auspex array. "Minor damage to all armour systems. Brother Castiel's left pauldron has suffered moderate structural compromise. My own spec systems are operating at reduced efficiency. The entity has resumed its previous course toward the ritual site." Thu slammed his power fist into a nearby wall, leaving a crater in the rocket. "Unacceptable. We underestimated its capabilities. It moves like no human I have ever encountered," said Castiel, examining the damage to his armour. "Yet it lacks the warp taint of a daemon." "Perhaps it is both," suggested Veyron. "Or neither. The Order Malus has documented entities that defy easy categorization." Brother Craven emerged from the shadows, his armor's stealth systems powering down. "I placed a tracker on the entity during the engagement, Brother Captain. We can follow at a safe distance and study its methods before our next attempt." Thu nodded approvingly. "Well done, Brother Craven. We shall observe and plan. The entity's combat doctrine is unlike anything in our tactical databases. It fights with a fury that rivals the Blood Angel's rage, yet maintains precision that would impress an ultramarine. And its arsenal," added Sebastian, "includes weapons that appear primitive, yet deliver energy signatures consistent with advanced architect." "Whatever it is," said Thu, "the Emperor demands its destruction. Reload and perform rites of repair. We move out in 5 minutes." As the kill team prepared for pursuit, Thule activated his Vox link to Inquisitor Malrek. "Inquisitor, this is Brother Captain Thule." Initial engagement with the entity was unsuccessful. "It possesses combat abilities beyond our projections," Malrek's voice crackled through the Vox. "Disappointing, Brother Captain, but not unexpected. The entity continues to defy categorization. My acolytes report increased warp activity throughout the hive. The cult's ritual approaches completion despite the entity's interference. We will not fail a second time, Inquisitor. See that you don't, Brother Captain. If the entity cannot be contained and the cult succeeds in opening a warp rift, I will have no choice but to recommend Exterminatus. Malresh out." Thu closed the Vox link, his expression grim behind his helmet. The stakes had been raised. Not just the life of one world, but potentially an entire subsector hung in the balance. The kill team would not fail again. "Brothers," he addressed his team, "the Inquisitor has authorized maximum force. Our next engagement will be decisive." The Space Marines nodded in solemn understanding. They would capture or kill the green-armoured entity or die in the attempt. Such was their duty as the Emperor's finest. In the heart of the Underhive, far from the precincts of Imperial authority, a different sort of power held sway. The cult of the Blood God had transformed an abandoned Prometheum refinery into a temple of slaughter. The great processing vats now held the blood of sacrifices rather than fuel. The control coitators chanted blasphemous litanies rather than production directives. The air itself seemed to pulse with malevolent anticipation. Lord Carrick, once a mid-level administrative official, now the exalted champion of Khorne on Morai Secundus, surveyed his domain with satisfaction. His transformation was nearly complete. What had begun as a human body was now a vessel of chaos, swollen with unnatural muscle and adorned with brass armour that had grown from his very flesh. His face retained a semblance of humanity, but his eyes burned with the fires of the warp. "The ritual nears completion," he growled, his voice distorted by a throat no longer fully human. "Soon, the veil will thin enough for our masters chosen to step through." Beside him stood Sorcerer Malachi, his presence an irony in a cult dedicated to a god who despised magic users. But pragmatism sometimes overruled dogma, even among the followers of the Blood God. Malachi's robes rippled with energies that hurt the eye to behold. His staff topped with a crystal that pulsed in rhythm with the great ritual circle inscribed on the refinery. Thor. "Something interferes," said Malachi, his voice oddly musical despite the gravity of his words. "Our outer shrines have been desecrated. The conduits of power are failing." Carrick snarled, spittle, flecking his distended jaw. "The Imperium's dogs snap at our heels. It matters not. We have sacrificed thousands to reach this point. The blood tide rises." "This is not the work of the Imperium," insisted Malachi. "Something else hunts in the darkness, something that knows our kind all too well." The sorcerer gestured to the crystal atop his staff. Within its facets, images formed and dissolved. A green-armoured figure moving through the Underhive, cultists falling before its onslaught, shrines shattered and desecrated. Carrick's rage built as he watched the destruction of his cult's work. "What manner of Imperial dog is this?" "Not Imperial," said Malachi. "Look closer." The crystal's image focused on the symbol adorning the warrior's armour. Carrick's eyes widened in recognition and fury. "Impossible," he snarled. "That mark belongs to legend, to another reality entirely." "And yet here he is," replied Malachi. "The Slayer, the doom of our kind across dimensions. He has somehow crossed the barriers between worlds." Carrick smashed his fist into a nearby control panel, crushing it to scrap. "It changes nothing. The ritual is too far advanced to stop now. If this Slayer wishes to die in our reality, I shall personally send him screaming back to his own hell." "Do not underestimate him," warned Malachi. "The legends speak of his eternal crusade against the Blood God's legions in another realm. He is anathema to our kind." Carrick laughed, a sound like metal grinding against stone. "I am ascended sorcerer, nearly a daemon prince in my own right. Let him come. I will offer his skull to Khorne personally." Malachi said nothing more, but doubt clouded his warp-touched mind. He turned his attention back to the ritual, chanting words that burned the air and caused the mortal cultists nearby to bleed from their eyes and ears. The great circle on the refinery floor began to glow with baleful crimson light, and the vats of blood bubbled and churned without heat. "Prepare the final sacrifices," ordered Carrick to his lieutenants, "and double the gods. Nothing must interrupt the ritual now." As his underlings rushed to obey, Carrick lifted his massive chain axe, a weapon that throbbed with dark energy and screamed for blood. Even when idle, he would be ready when the Slayer came, ready to prove himself worthy of his god's favour. The Slayer moved methodically through the Underhive, following the increasing concentration of demonic energy. His armour's systems had adapted to this reality's particular form of corruption, recalibrating to track the sources with greater precision. Each shrine he destroyed weakened the overall pattern, but the central nexus remained active, growing stronger even as its outlying conduits were severed. His encounter with the black-armoured warriors had been informative. They were not demons, but enhanced humans, similar to the Night Sentinels he had fought alongside in another life. Their weapons were powerful, their armor resilient, and their tactics disciplined. They had mistaken him for an enemy, which suggested this reality's defenders were unable to distinguish between corrupted and uncorrupted forces. It made no difference to his mission. He would destroy the demonic incursion with or without their aid. If they stood in his way, they would fall like any other obstacle. The Slayer paused at a junction, his senses detecting movement ahead. Different from the frenzied advance of cultists or the disciplined approach of the black-armoured warriors. Something lurked in the shadows, watching him with predatory intent. He raised his heavy cannon, tracking the movement. A flash of motion too quick for ordinary human perception. The Slayer fired, explosive rounds detonating against the far wall as the target dodged with inhuman speed. A figure dropped from the ceiling behind him. The Slayer spun, switching to his super shotgun in mid-turn. The assailant was humanoid but wrong, its proportions distorted by mutation. Bony ridges protruded from reddish skin, and its face was a nightmare of misplaced features. It wielded twin blades that glowed with unnatural energy. The demon struck with blinding speed, its blades seeking gaps in the Slayer's armor. He blocked with his forearm, sparks flying as demonic steel met prey to suit plating. His counterattack was a thunderous blast from the super shotgun, catching the creature point blank in its distorted chest. The daemon flew backward, ichor spraying from its wound, but it recovered mid-air, flipping to land on its feet with unnatural agility. The chest wound was already closing, corrupted flesh knitting together before the Slayer's eyes. The creature chittered something in a language the Slayer didn't understand, but the meaning was clear enough. Challenge, mockery, hatred. The Slayer responded as he always did, with violence. He charged forward, switching to his plasma rifle. A stream of energy bolts struck the daemon, causing it to shriek in pain and fury. It moved to evade, darting between the support columns of the underhive corridor with preternatural speed. The Slayer anticipated its path, firing not at the daemon, but at the column it was approaching. The structure exploded, showering the area with debris. The daemon faltered, momentarily disoriented by the destruction of its intended cover. A moment was all the Slayer needed. He closed the distance in an instant, grabbing the creature by its elongated throat. His grip was unbreakable, powered by rage that had fueled him across countless battles. The demon slashed frantically with its energy blades, scoring lines across the Slayer's armor, but failing to penetrate its defenses. The Slayer slammed the creature against the floor, then the wall, then the ceiling in a grom. Brutal sequence of impacts that would have killed any mortal being instantly. The demon's body broke and reformed repeatedly, its regenerative abilities struggling to keep pace with the destruction being inflicted upon it. Finally, the Slayer pinned it against a wall, one hand still crushing its throat. With his free hand he drew the crucible, its energy blade igniting with a sound like a dying star. The demon's eyes widened in recognition, and for the first time, fear. The energy blade plunged into the demon's chest, severing whatever passed for its heart. The creature convulsed, its regeneration faltering as the crucible's unique energy disrupted its warp-spawned biology. The Slayer twisted the blade, ensuring total destruction of the creature's core. When he withdrew the crucible, the daemon did not regenerate. Its body began to dissolve, returning to the immaterial realm from which it had been summoned. Soon, nothing remained but a smear of rapidly evaporating ichor. The Slayer deactivated the crucible and continued his advance, untroubled by the encounter. Such lesser demons were merely obstacles, distractions from his true purpose. His helmet's systems indicated the central nexus of corruption lay just ahead, beyond a massive bulkhead door that had once sealed off the refinery's most dangerous processes. Now it sealed in something far more dangerous. The door was reinforced steel designed to contain industrial explosions. Under normal circumstances, it would have required specialized equipment or authorization codes to open. The Slayer had neither. He did, however, have his BFG 900. The weapon hummed to life in his hands, drawing power from his suit's reserves. Green energy coalesced around the barrel, building to critical mass. The Slayer took aim at the center of the bulkhead and fired. The resulting explosion turned the reinforced door into superheated fragments that ricocheted throughout the antechamber. Through the smoke and debris, the Slayer strode into the heart of corruption that pulsed beyond. Inquisitor Malrech watched the tactical display with growing concern. The entity had destroyed the final barrier, protecting the central ritual site. Meanwhile, the Deathwatch kill team was still several minutes away, delayed by bands of frenzied cultists throwing themselves into the Space Marine's path. "We are running out of time," he said grimly. "Magos Reichen, what is the status of the warp fluctuations?" The tech priest's mechanical limbs whirred as he consulted his instruments. "Critical threshold approaching, Inquisitor. The rituals have weakened the barrier between materium and immaterium significantly. I estimate complete breach within 20 minutes if the central ritual is not disrupted." Malrech turned to his senior acolyte, a grim-faced woman whose body bore the scars of decades in inquisitorial service. "Interrogator Vale, prepare the astropathic message for the fleet. If the Deathwatch fails to neutralize both the entity and the cult within 15 minutes, we must assume the worst. Exterminatus protocols will be initiated." "Yes, Inquisitor," replied Vale, her expression carefully neutral despite the weight of the order she had been given. "The death sentence for an entire world." Malrech returned his attention to the display, watching the green rune that represented the entity entering the central chamber. "Now we will see its true purpose." On another screen, picked feeds from servo skulls showed the Deathwatch kill team fighting through the last bands of cultists blocking their path. Brother Captain Thu led from the front, his power sword cleaving through corrupted flesh with righteous fury. The rest of the kill team moved with the precision of living weapons, each Space Marine worth 100 ordinary soldiers, but they were still too far away. Whatever confrontation awaited in the ritual chamber, the entity would face it alone. Magos said, "Malrech, can you enhance the feed from the ritual chamber? I want to see what happens when the entity confronts the cult leadership. I shall attempt to redirect a servo skull." "Inquisitor," replied the tech priest. "However, warp interference is significant in that area. Image quality may be compromised." Malrech nodded. "Do what you can. I need to observe this encounter." As the Moses worked to establish a visual link to the ritual chamber, Malrech reflected on the strange turn of events. When he had first arrived on Mor Secundus, the situation had seemed straightforward. A cult uprising, a potential warp incursion, the need for swift and decisive inquisitorial intervention. Then the entity had fallen from the sky, and everything had changed. It hunted cultists with relentless efficiency, destroyed their shrines and slew their demons, actions that on the surface aligned with imperial interests, yet its origin, its nature, its very presence reeked of heresy and threat. "Feed established, Inquisitor," announced the Magos, though the quality is poor. The central display flickered, showing a grainy, distorted image of the ritual chamber, the great processing vats, now filled with blood, the blasphemous symbols inscribed on the floor glowing with malevolent light. The cultists arranged in concentric circles around the central altar, where a figure twice the size of a normal human stood with arms outstretched, and entering the chamber, the green-armoured entity, weapons ready. "Record everything," ordered Malrech. "This may be the only opportunity we have to observe the entity's true purpose." Lord Carrick felt the intruder's arrival before he saw it. The warp energies flowing through his mutated body rippled with disturbance as the bulkhead door exploded inward. He turned from the ritual circle, his massive chain axe roaring to life in anticipation. "The legendary Slayer graces us with his presence," he said, his voice booming across the chamber. "How fortunate that you arrived just in time to witness our triumph." The Slayer stepped through the smoke and debris, weapons ready. His helmet scanned the chamber, assessing threats and prioritizing targets. The central figure, clearly the leader, registered as a major threat. The robed figure beside him, manipulating some form of energy, represented a secondary danger. The cultists arranged around the ritual circle were merely obstacles, but it was the circle itself that demanded immediate attention. The Slayer's systems recognized the pattern, different in specific design, but identical in purpose to those he had encountered before. A portal, a gateway for demonic invasion. "Your arrival was prophesied, you know," continued Carrick, taking a step forward. His massive form towered over the cultists around him, brass armour fused with corrupted flesh. Though not in this exact form, the Blood God has many names across many realities and many enemies. The Slayer didn't respond. Words were meaningless. He raised his heavy cannon and opened fire. Explosive rounds streaked toward Carrick, but the champion of Khorne moved with surprising speed for his size. He dodged sideways, the shells detonating against the machinery behind him. With a roar that shook the chamber, Carrick charged forward, chain axe held high. The Slayer met the charge head-on, switching to his super shotgun. The blast caught Carrick in the chest, staggering him momentarily, but the champion's unnatural resilience allowed him to shrug off damage that would have torn a normal human apart. "I feel your rage, Slayer," laughed Carrick, swinging his chain axe in a horizontal arc. "It is pure, worthy of Khorne himself. Why do you resist? Your skull would have a place of honour on the blood god's throne." The Slayer ducked under the swing, the chain axe passing close enough to graze his helmet. He countered with an uppercut that connected with Carrick's jaw, the force of the blow lifting the massive champion off his feet. Carrick crashed into one of the blood-filled vats, causing crimson liquid to slosh over the sides. He rose quickly, spitting out a broken fang. Impressive strength, but futile. While the Slayer engaged Carrick, the cultists continued their ritual, their chanting growing more frenzied as the circle's glow intensified. Sorcerer Malachi directed their efforts, his staff pulsing with corrupted energy as he were complex patterns in the air. The Slayer noted the escalating ritual from his peripheral vision. Time was running short. He needed to end this quickly. He fired his ballista, the high-powered bolt striking Carrick in the shoulder. The projectile penetrated the brass armour, causing the champion to howl in pain and rage. Before Carrick could recover, the Slayer was upon him, delivering a series of devastating blows that drove the corrupted leader backward. Carrick countered with a sweeping kick that caught the Slayer off guard, sending him sliding across the chamber floor. The champion followed up with a downward strike of his chain axe, aiming to split the Slayer in two. The Slayer rolled aside at the last moment, the chain axe embedding itself in the floor where he had been an instant before. As Carrick struggled to free his weapon, the Slayer switched to his plasma rifle and fired a continuous stream at the ritual circle. Energy bolts struck the glowing symbols, disrupting their pattern. Cultists caught in the barrage died instantly, their bodies reduced to ash. Malachi screamed in frustration, redirecting his staff's power to shield the central portion of the ritual. "Kill him!" The sorcerer shrieked to Carrick. "The ritual cannot be interrupted now." Carrick abandoned his embedded chain axe and charged the Slayer again, his massive fists wreathed in warp fire. The two warriors collided in a thunderous impact, trading blows that would have shattered ordinary combatants. The champion's mutated physiology granted him incredible strength and resilience, allowing him to absorb punishment that would have failed even in estates. But the Slayer matched him blow for blow, driven by rage that had fueled an eternal crusade across dimensions. As they fought, the ritual reached its crescendo. The blood in the vats began to boil without heat. The air above the central circle tore open, revealing a swirling vortex of crimson and black energies. Demonic whispers filled the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. The Slayer knew he had to end this now. As Carrick launched another attack, the Slayer sidestepped and grabbed the champion's outstretched arm. Using his opponent's momentum against him, he executed a perfect throw that sent Carrick crashing into the central altar. The impact disrupted Malachi's concentration, causing his protective weaving to falter. The Slayer seized the opportunity, drawing the crucible once more. Its energy blade ignited just as Carrick was regaining his feet. With preternatural speed, the Slayer closed the distance and thrust the blade through Carrick's chest. The champion's eyes widened in shock and disbelief as the energy weapon pierced his corrupted heart. He tried to speak, to curse or defy, but blood filled his throat. The Slayer withdrew the blade and in one fluid motion severed Carrick's head from his shoulders. The champion's body collapsed, twitching as warp energies dissipated from the cooling flesh. "Impossible," gasped Malachi, backing away as the Slayer turned toward him. The ritual was perfect. The blood price paid. The sorcerer raised his staff, channeling what power remained into a desperate attack. A bolt of crimson lightning struck the Slayer, enveloping him in coruscating energy. Warning indicators flashed across his visor as his armor's system struggled to repel the assault. But the Slayer had endured worse, much worse. He advanced through the energy storm, each step deliberate and unstoppable. Malachi's eyes widened in terror as he realized his most powerful attack was merely slowing his enemy, not stopping him. The sorcerer turned to flee, but there was nowhere to go. The Slayer raised his plasma rifle and fired a single precise shot. The energy bolt struck Malachi's staff, causing it to explode in a shower of crystalline fragments. The feedback surged through the sorcerer's body, emulating him from within. His final scream was cut short as he collapsed into ash. With the cult leadership destroyed, the Slayer turned his attention to the ritual itself. The tear in reality was still growing, the demonic whispers becoming roars of anticipation. The remaining cultists continued their chanting, too far gone in religious ecstasy to register the death of their leaders. The Slayer knew what had to be done. He had closed portals before in many different realities. The methods varied, but the principle remained the same: disrupt the energy flow, destroy the anchoring symbols, eliminate the living conduits. He switched to his chain gun, its barrels beginning to spin. Lead filled the air as he methodically eliminated the remaining cultists, breaking the human chain that helped power the ritual. As they fell, the tier's expansion slowed, but did not stop. Next, he targeted the blood vats, his explosive rounds rupturing the containers and spilling their contents across the chamber floor. The unnatural boiling ceased as the corrupted blood lost its connection to the ritual circle. Still, the tier remained, now pulsing erratically as it struggled to stabilize. Beyond its swirling energies, the Slayer could sense something massive stirring, preparing to cross over. Something ancient and powerful. A greater daemon, perhaps, or something worse. There was one option left. The BFG 900, the weapon of last resort. The Slayer raised the massive gun, its systems interfacing with his armor to draw the necessary power. The weapon hummed as it charged, green energy coalescing around its barrel once more. He took aim at the center of the tier and waited for the charge to reach maximum capacity. Just as he was about to fire, a new presence entered the chamber. The black-armored warriors had arrived, weapons trained on the Slayer's back. "Hold your fire," ordered Brother Captain Thu, taking in the scene before him. The dead cultists, the destroyed ritual components, the fluctuating tar in reality that still threatened to disfuse demonic entities into real space. The kill team spread out, covering the Slayer from multiple angles while maintaining a safe distance. They had witnessed the aftermath of his combat prowess and were not eager to engage him again without clear advantage. "The entity appears to be attempting to close the warp rift," reported Brother Sebastian, his sensors analyzing the BFG's energy signature. "The weapon it wields contains power comparable to a small starship's main gun." Thou hesitated, torn between his orders to neutralize the entity and the obvious fact that it was fighting against the very forces the Death Watch had been sent to combat. In that moment of indecision, the Slayer made the choice irrelevant. He fired the BFG. The green energy projectile streaked into the tier, disappearing into its swirling depths. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a shockwave of verdant fire erupted from within the rift, causing it to convulse violently. The demonic roars beyond turned to screams of pain and rage. The tier began to collapse, its edges drawn inward as the BFG's energy sphere detonated in whatever approximation of reality existed on the other side. The backlash of energy washed over the chamber, forcing even the Astartes to brace themselves against its force. When the energy dissipated, the tear was gone. Reality had reasserted itself, though the residual corruption would linger for decades. The immediate threat, however, had been neutralized. The Slayer lowered the BFG, its power cells temporarily depleted. He turned to face the Deathwatch kill team, weapons still trained on him. The standoff stretched for several heartbeats, neither side willing to make the first move. Finally, Brother Captain Thu lowered his bolter slightly. "Entity," he said, his vox-amplified voice echoing in the chamber. "You have fought against the forces of chaos this day. Explain your purpose and origin." The Slayer remained silent, his posture neither threatening nor submissive. He had no interest in explanations or justifications. His purpose was eternal and unchanging. To hunt demons wherever they might be found, to stop their incursions, to make them pay for their transgressions against humanity across all dimensions. Before the situation could resolve itself, a new energy signature manifested in the chamber. Not the corrupted crimson of a warped tear, but a swirling vortex of emerald light similar to the one that had brought the Slayer to this reality. The Slayer recognized it immediately. A dimensional rift, a way back to his eternal crusade across the multiversal hell he had been navigating before his unexpected arrival in this reality. The Fortress of Doom systems had found him locked onto his position across dimensional barriers. The entity is attempting to open another portal, warned Brother Sebastian, his auspex array tracking the energy fluctuations. Unknown pattern, but similar to its arrival signature. "Stop it," ordered Tula, raising his bolter once more. "In the name of the God Emperor, stand down." The Slayer ignored the command, taking a step toward the dimensional rift. His work in this reality was done. The demonic incursion had been halted. Other hells awaited his attention. "Fire!" commanded Tool. Bolt rounds streaked toward the Slayer, but the dimensional rift expanded at that exact moment, enveloping him in emerald light. The projectiles passed through empty air as the Slayer vanished, drawn back to his own eternal war across dimensions. The Deathwatch kill team lowered their weapons, staring at the space where the entity had been. "Throne," muttered Brother Castiel. "What was that?" "Unknown," replied Tool, "but it fought against the ruinous powers with a fury I have seldom witnessed. Perhaps it was not our enemy after all." "The Inquisitor will want a full report," said Brother Von. Thule nodded grimly. "And he shall have it, though I doubt even the Ordo Malus has answers regarding what we witnessed today." Inquisitor Malresh stood before the High Lords of Terror, his aged face impassive as he delivered his report on the events of Moai Secundus. The Grand Chamber was silent, save for his voice. The assembled masters of the Imperium, listening with varying degrees of interest and skepticism. "The entity departed as mysteriously as it arrived," concluded Malrek. "The cult was destroyed. The warp incursion halted. Moira Secundus remains a productive Imperial world, though I have left a contingent of acolytes to monitor for any residual corruption." Lord Militant Hectorus Carmine leaned forward. "And you believe this entity, this Slayer, may return?" Malrek chose his words carefully. The dimensional rift that claimed him appeared to be controlled, deliberate. It suggests a level of technology or warpcraft beyond our current understanding. If the entity can traverse dimensions at will, then yes, it may return. "Should we consider it a threat?" asked the Lord Inquisitor, his face hidden behind a golden mask. "It fought against the forces of chaos with singular purpose," replied Malrek. "In that specific instance, its goals aligned with our own, but it answered to no imperial authority, followed no recognizable doctrine. It was not human, though it wore the shape of a man. Such beings are unpredictable, dangerous. Yet you did not execute the exterminatus option," noted the master of the administratum, his tone neutral, but his implication clear. Malrek straightened. The threat was neutralized. The world saved. Exterminatus is the last resort, not the first. The Imperium cannot afford to lose product worlds without absolute necessity. The Lord Inquisitor nodded slightly, approving of the answer. "And what of the symbol you reported? The one that resembled chaos iconography?" "Further research suggests it was not a chaos symbol at all," said Malrek. "My initial assessment was in error. The Ordo Malus archives contain obscure references to similar iconography from pre-imperial times. A warning sign denoting great danger." "A warning to whom?" asked Carmine. Malrek's thin lips curved into a cold smile. "To the demons, Lord Militant. To the demons." The High Lords exchanged glances, processing this information. Finally, the Lord Inquisitor spoke again. "Your report will be sealed in the Ordo Malus archives, Inquisitor Malrek. If this entity returns to Imperial space, you will be notified immediately. Until then, consider the matter closed." Malrek bowed slightly. "As you command, my lords." As he turned to leave the chamber, Malrek reflected on what he had witnessed through the grainy-picked feed, the entity's combat prowess, its single-minded determination, its arsenal of weapons that defied categorization. In all his centuries of service to the Imperium, hunting the enemies of mankind across 1,000 worlds, Malrek had never encountered anything quite like the Slayer, a being of pure, focused rage, channeled not into mindless destruction, but precise, calculated violence against the forces of chaos. Perhaps, thought Malrek, in a galaxy beset by enemies on all sides, there was room for such an ally, unpredictable though it might be. The eternal war against the ruinous powers demanded strange bedfellows at times, or perhaps the entity represented a new threat, one that simply had not revealed its true nature yet. The Imperium had been betrayed before by those who seemed to share common cause. Either way, Malrek would be ready when the Slayer returned, as he always was. For in the grim darkness of the far future, vigilance was the only currency that truly mattered. The Doomslayer's saga in the 41st millennium had ended for now. But across dimensions, across realities, His eternal crusade continued. Demons trembled at his coming. No matter what names they bore or what gods they served, and somewhere in the swirling chaos of the warp, the blood god added a new name to his list of enemies, a mortal who defied immortality, a warrior who challenged gods, the Doomslayer, the unchained predator, the Hellwalker, rip and tear until it is done.